Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EFF podcast. I'm your host, Lebohang Mujapilu. We have an exciting episode for you today as we reflect on 10 years since the Fees Must Fall movement. Yes, it has been that long. And we need to reflect on what happened at the time. We need to reflect on what has happened since then. And we need to think about where are we headed as a country when it comes to the promise of free, quality, affordable, decolonized education that the Fallists were fighting for over 10 years ago. Currently, it does not look like it is coming because very recently, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition were determined to put students who owed fees to universities on blacklists and sell their credit. This is a very clear case of attacking young people once again in a space where they already have limited access to opportunities, have high unemployment rates, and are currently not being able to afford to go to university. Today, to reflect on these things, we have three special guests. The first two are Nhlanhla and Koketso, who are band members of Iphupho, Lika, Biko, an incredible band that has been on a spiritual quest to enlighten and heal through music and is the result of the Fees Must Fall movement. And their job is to, at least their dream, is to conscientize and to live and be the soundtrack of the movement of Fees Must Fall and the youth currently. Koketso is also a member of the EFF, representing us in the Gauteng provincial legislature. He's also an activist, a blogger, and an entrepreneur. So we're excited to have these two to speak about the art and the music and what it means in the movement. Secondly, we also have Funzani Mthembu, who was also involved in the Fees Must Fall movement 10 years ago, and is an investment and economic analyst, activist advocating for ethical economic practices. Although her work concerns numbers, she's also interested in how those numbers affect how people in society actualize. And as a member of the Fallist movements, she has taken her work further into understanding the numbers within the system of education and higher education in particular in South Africa, and what does that means for us as a country. Well, I'm excited to have these three guests who are all former Fallists, and we're going to tuck in to some goodness of reflection and intellectual thought and art. We're very excited to be here. It's 10 years since Fees Must Fall, and both of you were highly involved in the protests. I want you to take me back to 2015 and the moment that you both got involved in the movement. What was happening? What was the experience? And what drove you to be part of that moment?
Well,
we can start with you.
Thank you, Lebo, and thank you for having us. I think for me, it started in the late 2014, actually, during the SRC elections campaign, where, there was becoming a clear line between Black conscious organizations at campus, at VETS, and what was the then contemporary ANC style PYA, Progressive Youth Alliance, and I think there was an eruption of some res policy, which sort of said that they want to incentivize white kids, Indian kids, the minority to stay in the residences.
Yeah.
And it sparked a huge debate. And I think throughout the SRC campaign, it was an awakening moment for most of us to look at how race plays out in the context of an academic space. And I'm sure you'd understand that as Black students, we don't need to be incentivized. We don't come from around the suburbs that's around
It's around Wits, yes.
We come from Eastern Cape, we come from Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northwest, and we come from remote areas of the country. So it's something that while it was being fought by the student population, we really were awakened. And a lot of students were drawn to, politics by that moment. And it was one of those moments where you get a chance to, relate, because vets, sometimes your blackness, you must stomach it.
Yes,
You must
indeed.
swallow it and pretend and adjust. You must not say that I don't know how to log in into a computer.
No.
When they say type in essay 1005 words, Harvard referencing method, you need to
figure it out.
You figure it out, and it was quite interesting how it brought a lot of students. I argue that the 2014 SRC election campaign, I think one of the EFF leaders, Komsavuyani Pambo, was a candidate in those elections. Cebo Dlamini was a candidate in those elections, and it was a very, because those are very well-spoken people, convincing, charismatic individuals. It drew a lot of students to politics, and I think that's where it started for me. During that process, I like singing, and it sort of put me in the forefront.
Yes, you were the singer. You
was
were
not matured enough to be political leadership at the time, but through song,
through your voice,
I found myself in the forefront. So I think, maybe.
Okay, Nhlanhla can tell us where he was.
Well, for me, I think I would say it was quite profound for me and very inspirational seeing the Roots Must Fall movement, in Cape Town. And also,
So at this point, you were also at Wits University.
As at Wits, I started in 2013.
All right.
Same struggles, it's a culture shock. And what now makes this moment of 2015 profound is that you begin to see your kind of people, people that, whose politics you resonate with, and also you're facing the same struggles, as Black people in an anti-Black institution. So for me, that was really powerful, because in the spaces that we are as artists, the focus is more on your craft. There's not so much of politics in the School of Arts, but then that moment gave us an opportunity to share ideas and literally be in solidarity as Black students, but then also it also was an opportunity to learn about the struggles that the workers were facing.
Yes, indeed, because one of the fights was the insourcing of workers.
Yeah, because like at the face value, you would say like, why are workers involved, and why are students involved in issues of workers? But then the moment became a reminder that you are Black first, before you're a worker, before you're a student, and therefore we are all oppressed, we are all being exploited. Yeah.
And I think, as a person who was at Wits many years ago, it was quite inspiring to see young people. I don't think I'd ever seen a moment like that in a university or at Wits University to begin with. People have protested over fees before, people have protested over individual things, but to see that coming together, and I like the way you brought in like the politics of it, like the Black consciousness that was central to it, I think was what kind of made this moment very unique in this nature. And also what made it scary, I think, for the institution and politics and policing and everything at large. I want to go to, so you said you were a singer during the protest. This is how you were contributing. What was your part?
My part, I was just a student.
You were just in the marching.
I was on the ground following. I'm a very good follower.
You were a good follower. I mean, it was lots of people, and a few people stood out. I want to think now from you, Nhlanhla, as Iphupho like a Biko. How did it come about from this movement?
Artistically, during my first year in 2013, I'd been consuming a lot of jazz music, as I still am. I don't think I'll ever stop. And one artist that I was drawn to is the late great pianist Moses Taiwa Mulelekwa. And to cut it short, Moses has a song titled Biko's Dream, you know, and at the same time I was reading Biko, reading Fanon, you know, and now having read those books, like especially Biko, you know, and being drawn close to him because of his sacrifices, you know, how he literally laid down his life for Black people's liberation, you know. And now having this song that doesn't have lyrics, you know, it had me question where is Biko in this song called Biko's Dream. And around the same time, I wanted to start a band, you know, just like any other musicians. When you get to a certain point whereby you're composing, you're starting a collective, and thinking about a name, that was the name for me, Biko's Dream. Now, with this decolonial journey or project that we're
Yes.
embarking on, it was a loose translation from Biko's Dream to Iphupho Biko, which is in isiXhosa. Yeah.
Okay, so would you consider your music to be protest music in this sense?
It's a combination of all sorts, you know. We have three overarching themes.
Yes.
One being spirituality, and secondly being what can I call it? Black consciousness, Pan Africanism, and we do that through the medium that is jazz, you know. And historically, jazz has always been a music of resistance.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are our main themes in whatever that we do.
Okay. Coming back to you, Koketso, I'm wondering, so when did your journey in politics begin? Like, because at that moment you were singing. When did you
Yeah.
start talking and moving within the political space?
Actually, very funny. I was singing, I grew up playing football, right? But in 2014, something interesting happens. At the beginning of the year, there was a refusal to register the EFF as a club and society at Wits. And I get called by a guy called Mbegezeli Mbele, who was the secretary of the branch at the time. And they just call us to say, no, we're visiting the vice chancellor's office, we're coming back. You know? When we get there, this guy says, we're not leaving until the EFF is registered.
Oh my.
Savyan is there, and you know, throughout that process, we learned songs, and I was singing the songs that I.
So this was like a sit-in at the vice chancellor's office.
Yeah, it happened for like over a weekend. He was in USA, he had to fly back. The EFF leadership was starting to threaten closing the campus and all that. And it's in that process where I become politicized. Later on in the year, I get elected into the leadership structure, and I get to learn. It was an inductive process. But I think those two incidences, I'm counting them, the refusal of the fight, the occupation at the Vice Chancellor's office, the fight against the rest policy during the SRC elections, but also importantly, there was a fight for workers. The 2014 election manifesto of the EFF on campus at the time argued for the first time in the history of VETS that workers, there was a section on workers because they were not allowed to sit in the chairs that they clean. There was some basement floor where there was a changing rooms, and the EFF manifesto spoke on that. But equally, the EFF manifesto spoke on the idea by Robert Sobukwe that, you know, the syllabus must be decolonized. Like education to us means service to Africa. You know, whatever branch of learning you are for Africa. So it was a very, very awakening moment. And equally, there was a movement on campus, which is very important. If we're remembering the journey of Fees Must Fall, you cannot leave out Black Thought Symposium, which was a movement on campus, which was not politically affiliated. It was a very neutral space trying to push the ideas of Black consciousness. And ANC comrades would come, the EFF comrades, PAC comrades, PASMA, and all these.
So there was a very distinct effort to conscientize people.
And this is why it was not a mistake that Fees Must Fall happened across the party lines, you know, and we put our ideology of our parties behind Black consciousness as a starting point. And I think it was very important to have that kind of space because politics sometimes could dilute the movement. And we found a purpose in this instance that sort of put all our interests together and our blackness at the forefront to say the workers can't be treated in an anti. When I see this worker, I see my mother, and personal experiences also played a role because in 2014, when I entered VETS and I got NSFAS, my mother had recently been entrenched. So when they were retrenching those workers, exploiting them, we find out that they don't have UIF, they don't have Provident Fund, and actually what the university is paying for them to the company versus what they get
is the big difference.
Very, very, very different, and it sort of emboldened us to say our unity will be paramount at this time. And I think it was a very important process to have went through. And when Rhodes falls on the other side, already there was a movement of workers and there was actually a group of academics that had said also on the academic side of things, why are these departments, why are these faculties led by Indian and white individuals, challenging the university essentially in all
aspects.
And it was a very intersectional approach to things, and I think it was a very important process in my political development because I was just
you were just a young boy who came to university.
19 years old, and there I'm into leadership. I'm in the forefront because very quickly into the process, I was elected into the structures. And I must now start to. So when Buvuyani I expelled, we remain, and to run the organization, very big shoes to fill. But we found, a way to exist. And I also like that there was PASMA in the space because PASMA is important because they hold you accountable. They don't want the Freedom Chart. So we had to waste a lot of time debating why the Freedom Charter
is important.
A radical interpretation. The ANC saying no, Freedom Charter is a revolutionary document. So we were like, no. The curriculum in the school is problematic. And I think we sort of started having a purpose of why are we here? What are we being trained for? And it's a 1976 conversation. Are we being trained to go and be employees of the white system? When will we stop being consumers? When will we start producing? When will the engineers start leading, engineering companies in this country? When will the miners start to, that conversation came. And I think it was important that Iphupho Biko came out. I think there's someone, Mastole Mland, who says, one of the most beautiful things to ever come out of Fees Must Fall is Iphupho Biko.
Yeah.
As a band which embodies a voice of a generation, a soundtrack
to a revolution, to a movement in South Africa, which is why I think I enjoy when you say that jazz has always been the music of resistance, because even when people were not able to go out and protest, the way that music played a part in carrying the time, carrying the moment, and like you said, being a soundtrack to what was actually happening. And it's exciting to actually think, you were both so young, but able to insert yourself within this politics that was so personal and political at the same time, and be able to participate in it so strongly and pick it and move it forward. We are now 10 years post Fees Must Fall. How do you see the situation for students now? How do you see the fight for free and affordable education in South Africa?
I mean, I will say the reason why we had to exist as a collective, as a people Biko, it's the importance of centering the arts in the struggle.
Yes.
Historically, we've seen in terms of like the role that the arts has played for our liberation, and it then shows how important the artist is, because the artist is free to say whatever that needs to be said without holding back. And now what I see to have been something that was left out in a lot of challenges that we have faced as a country, and even within the Fees Must Fall movement. And one of my critiques has been like to the Vets Fees Must Fall, to say ways in which we approached the protest, the artists were sort of like sidelined, you know. But I was impressed in terms of how the UCT comrades, for example, always incorporated the arts. And now this is not just about Fees Must Fall. This has to do with our government. It has to do with political parties, because if we do not have a sense of culture amongst young people, now not speaking as students, we're speaking about society in general, a society that doesn't engage art or consume the right or the progressive type of art will never amount to anything. And I personally say that you can never trust a leader that doesn't listen to jazz music.
It's very specific jazz music.
Because it's a music of resistance, you know. And I feel like we need to we need to center the art, because there are a lot of possibilities here. And what now you see, art is just used as an entertainment within political spaces. Leaders will come, make their speeches, and then after, they will have an artist that will perform. An artist will contradict what the leader was talking about. You are saying young people must not drink. You're saying young people must not take drugs. And then after, you put on an artist that promotes the very same thing. So whatever that you are saying is being undone is being unheard. So for me, it's about that, in terms of how we can reflect in terms of what could have been done better, and really try to find the loopholes in this current system, because how we protested, there are no longer politics in the institutions, right? And instead, it's like a military base, essentially. There are even drones now, for example, at Wits University.
That's how hectic they've upgraded that security.
Yeah, perhaps now the revolution will have to be digitized, because the media and the technology is what's being used to sort of silence the students. So the struggles are still the same. We therefore now need to find ways in terms of how do we then bring back the stakeholders to the table and ensure that education is free. And I believe the fight for free, quality, decolonial education is a means, to the ultimate prize that we want, which is land.
Yes.
Ultimately, that's what we are seeking, land repossession. And so it's very important that the student are cognizant of such issues, Basically, we are still in the same
position. Yeah.
So I think, to answer your question, the fight for free education of Fees Must Fall, justice was never delivered. You only had lip service that was paid. I think, when a dream deferred is not a dream denied.
No.
And it's brewing. I can tell you now, they just improved their system of policing. In the campuses, there's an over presence of campus security. They've invested more in fencing, in cameras, to sort of prevent...
Isn't it so ironic how they can invest in policing people so heavily who want affordable education?
They've invested in the idea of lynching the student leader. And it's very important, because the lynching process is not for the one who's being lynched.
No, it's for the
those
rest.
that are watching.
Yes.
The comrades that are expelled across in UKZN, in UCT, in New Offs, NW. It was for the purpose of scaring this current generation. And now they've realized that the Fees Must Fall process was rooted in the residences, because the residences carry the culture.
Yes.
And I'm proud to be a Fees Must Fall generation, because go to Vets, those students in the resis, even in their first year, They're speaking in political jargon.
Yes.
Massive. And it shows that the residences were politicized.
Yes.
And what they've tried to do is to remove the res leadership, because the res leadership politicizes the first years.
What did they call it on Housecom?
The House Committees.
Yes.
And it's deliberate to show that they have no interest. And it shows that these universities are a school. Worse now, they're trying to criminalize student debt, you know?
Yeah.
They're trying to condemn us into perpetual servitude. They don't want... no one is speaking about what quality of graduates are we producing. No one is speaking about the crop of graduates that is sitting in the townships, unemployed. All these industries are dominated by which companies? You know, capitalist companies, white-owned companies that are plundering our resources, our mineral resources, and that are plundering our land and not giving back. There's no plan to say, as a lawyer, what are the legal problems that you are going to be focusing on so that you are trained to equip our courts and our legal system to deal with the social ills that we're facing. There's no plan to invest in our medical doctors. As we speak right now, there's a crisis. The Gauteng Department of Health is collapsing, and we are fighting about foreigners, you know? And we're not really offering how do we curb this rise of non-communicable diseases, chronic diseases. How do we improve the patient care system? No one is training those doctors. You are literally preparing to go and work for Netcare because that is the best possible job you can get in the field. And there's no plan from government to say, what are we going to do in 20 years with this crop of graduates, and how is it going to improve the economy, and how is it going to improve the quality of life, and how is it going to improve the general experience of a general South African? Like, our universities are only producing employees. You will do commerce and you will go and work in that company that rips your mother off of the insurance. You understand what I'm saying? And it's a cycle that we need to... and I'm glad that Fees Must Fall opened the eyes of people. I'm glad that the EFF brought the land to the conversation. Them Tudor's recent album, Gijima, Ngengqondo, is speaking about mawubuya umhlaba wethu. And I'm happy that artists are starting to realize and wake up and see that music can be used to advance a particular conversation. That's the role of the artist in the revolution. And we must not be far away from what Bo Miriam Makeba used to do.
No, we can't.
And Bo Brahiu used to do. And we must write songs about our problems and the solutions thereof. And I think it's something which is happening. It's brewing. The youth right now is more radical than the youth of Fees Must Fall.
Because they don't have anything.
Yeah.
There's limited access to these institutions. Secondly, the fees, as we know, is incredible. Thirdly, you can't get your certificate if you haven't finished paying.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they want to come in now with this debt thing where your name is given to, the creditors, and you're blacklisted, and it's like there's a continued deliberate, just undermining of youth in this country. Like, what do you think is behind that? Just like this need to just ensure that the youth are just never rise, do not have a heritage, do not have an inheritance, and just no distinct future for themselves.
For me, I think there's a lack of conscientization, because that's where it starts. Once you, for example, with the Fees Must Fall movement, what we began to see was that reading became fashionable. It was cool to say, I have this book. Even in social spaces, people will just bring books to show that I'm reading, And so that's the culture that needs to be promoted, because in society, you have a third of leaders, and if they are used properly, the other 2/3 they will follow, and basically there needs to be that sort of culture that occupation in this space, because for me personally, it's a question of what is the youth consuming, and now genre-wise in the country, can see that a lot of young people are consuming piano. What's the message there, and where do they get this type of music? So whoever that is conscious, those spaces, they need to be occupied, and whoever has the platform, for example, if you have a political party like the EFF that does have community engagements, how many of those kind of engagements, and I'm not only speaking to the EFF, I'm just speaking to Black political parties in general, be it the ANC, be it the PAC, most of these organizations are not thinking, or at least they are not doing enough in terms of ensuring that there are different ways in which young people can be conscientized, So I think for me, once it all starts in the mind, once someone is convinced mentally, and they grasp the ideological position, it now makes sense. It is easier for them to act. Because if they are not conscientized, then we are left with a generation of Black Twitter that responds before even thinking, Most of them, at least, let me not say.
And a lack of organizing.
Yeah.
Gatekeeping in the space is a problem. And I think why the youth is not taken seriously is because of, ever since the decline of the ANC, everyone is on an exit plan mode. And they're preparing for the day that they will not govern.
Not govern anymore.
And,
yes.
And
they are determined still right now.
And another thing is because they are scared of the unity of the youth that fees must fall short them. Look at the DA caucus in Parliament. How many young people do they have? Look at the ANC caucus. They are bringing 60-year-old people as ministers of youth, and you see that there is no deliberate effort to plug in the youth because they are scared that the youth can unite. It scared them that Fees Must Fall came to Lutule House and said, Kodema Ndashe must sit down. And this is where the country is run, and this is where the solution. It scared them, and it's something that we must deliberately speak about. The people who are running platforms that empower artists, that empower youth, are gatekeepers. They give opportunities to their friends. They give opportunities to their family because they want to accumulate. And we need to firstly make sure that we get rid of the gatekeeping. The message that Iphupho Biko is spreading out there is a message which people are uncomfortable with. Sometimes we've reached 10 years as a band, even us, without, properly being given a chance. We have to go and fight to be in certain platforms. And it's only when we get a standing ovation that people will be like, these guys are really cool. But because our message have not left the masses, it's able to awaken them. And no one is ever on their chairs when Iphupho takes a podium. Precisely because of we have connected, with the message that the people already know.
Yes, it's within.
It's within, and it becomes easy. But there's a lot of gatekeeping in the space, and not only in the art space, generally all over. There's gatekeeping, and you will never see a true potential of South African youth until we've dealt with the problem of gatekeeping.
They don't want young people to rise because they feel threatened.
Yes.
And they want to maintain the system that they keep eating very deeply from.
Yes. You must say what they want to say.
And can you tell me about that experience? I think the first time I saw your band, I think it was Fête de la Musique, some many years ago, when they still had that festival in Newtown.
2016.
Yeah, it was 2016, yes. I was in awe. I was like goosebumps. Like, what is the sound? What, and I like what you say that it's touching something that already exists inside of you. A sense of home, a sense of sadness because there's that feeling of we've been fighting for so long as a people, and also a sense of hope, that there is still more for us. I want to just hear about your own experiences delivering this kind of music to your audiences and the spaces that, and what kind of spaces do you find to be important for your music to exist?
I mean, it starts from the personal. These are our lived experiences. So basically, what we're singing about, it's what we experience in our lives, and these things that we sing about are things that we believe. We don't do it for clout or anything. So there's no time off. We do this thing full time. So I guess that's why now it will have that sort of like impact. But then also it's also again the belief of conscientizing, which is the work, and also to have a generation that is spiritually rooted. At the time whereby a lot of young people, like, they are drowning.
Can you tell me about that spiritual aspect of your music?
I mean, the spiritual aspect, it's whatever that gives you peace, whatever that keeps you sane, whoever God is to you, and also remembering that you have an entire lineage of ancestors that live within you, and therefore there is a duty that there is a generational mandate that you are a part of. So you are an extension, and you will equip your way like you can equip yourself to ensure that ultimately become this vessel of honor and a voice of authority that can ignite, a voice that can be followed, a voice that can inspire, So not everyone can sing, right? And not everyone can act, not everyone can paint, but the painter can inspire one to act in the morning and say enough is enough, And so that's what it is for us. We want to say what needs to be said so that those who can act. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think Iphupho Biko is potentially one of the most important bands, and I'm saying this without bias, in the country because of we balance the fact that Black people are spiritual people, and the ritual is always a part of them.
Yes.
And it plays itself out when you're on stage. But equally that we must remember against forgetting. And constantly, Mama Winnie, Robert Sobukwe, Steve Biko, Tsetse Mashinini, Mthembu, and all our heroes and heroines, Chris Hani, are always a part of our message, because we have also realized that entertainment has been used as a means of making people to forget.
Yeah.
And when I say gatekeeping, I mean that they rather take the guy who's speaking about Mjolo than the guy who's speaking about the land. And maybe sometimes they do the research. These guys actually saying kill the poor. What? How can we have them here? We'll lose funders. We'll lose sponsors of, and you're promoting hate speech and all that. Yeah. But you are able to see a certain attentiveness when we take a podium that people know that it's time to stand up. They might not be organized in that way currently, but they know that we are landless.
Yeah.
White people own the land, and therefore we are not just unemployed. We Black people used to work the land. When they had the land, were unemployed, were labeled useless and lazy because they want us to sell their labor.
Yes.
You used to work in your backyard, and farm and do all those things. And that is our heritage that they're trying to take away from us. And the idea that we should stop being consumers will now be awakened by the fact that we're sitting so many of us with degrees and diplomas and certificates. It will be awakened again, that conversation that we need to be employers. Actually, who are the leaders of this industry? Why are we not removing them? Why are we not doing... Already that conversation of outsourcing must fall, of fees must fall, is a conversation which right now in the townships, young people, when they see a construction site, they go and stop it. and say nothing for us without us. Who are
Yes.
the people that you've hired here? We need to be with the ones that are working. It's gonna get there to the point where they say, no, we actually want a state-owned company.
Yeah.
We actually want, more sustainability in terms of they don't want 350, I can tell you now.
No.
They want proper opportunities.
Yes.
They want to be given an opportunity to further themselves and to realize their potential as young people. And there's no one, there's a guy called Hugo Chavez, I think,
Yes.
that says that no army, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. I think the revolution is coming.
It's
in South
coming.
Africa. It can become slow, but young people are waking up, and I'm of the view that the next election will shock us because young people will speak for themselves. First-time voters will speak for themselves, and they will paint a different picture than what the media up there is trying to paint, because the media is trying to paint an idea that no, South Africa must go on a coalition mode. No one is yeah, we must ask them. And that's why there's fragmentation of the black vote and creating
Very much.
new parties.
Yes.
It's deliberate to sort of
Just spread it out.
diffuse, this energy that is coming with young people. And I think it can only be postponed. Like right now, young people will use TikTok to mobilize themselves into the streets and no one will stop it. And the fact that they'll spend more on policing us than investing in us, it's something which is going to anger black youth. And just like 1976, they will act. And there's no one who can stop them from that.
My final question, I think, is as to the future of people like Biko. Like, where do you want to be? What more do you want to do? And where do you see yourselves in the coming future?
Ultimately, we want to see a free nation of black people, completely liberated. The ultimate prize is freedom. And we hope to see it in our lifetime. If not, at least we must have multiplied by the time we leave the stage, And this sound that we have it's a global sound, In South Africa, they appreciate us because of the message and the sound. So now, even for someone who can't understand the language, the sound still resonates. The sound still speaks, in the same way that I could hear Biko in Moses Mlelekwa's song, Biko's Dream. The world can hear Biko in our music, So it is a global sound, and that's where we see Iphupho moving, like on a global
Have you
stage.
guys performed in other African countries?
It's only Swatini where we've been, and there is interest because when you check your stats on these digital streaming platforms, we are able to gauge where the music is being consumed, and we do have followers from various parts. So that's where it's happening, and also we've decided that the Fees Must Fall movement won't. We decided to continue that struggle now on stage.
Yes.
Right? In that it did not end in 2016, and part of our work of conscientizing, we have a show that's coming up on the 27th of September at the Market Theatre. It's called Vulega Mbobo. Mbobo Vulega.
Wow.
So if you were there on the ground, you know what that song means. And essentially it is again same as this conversation that we've just had, reflecting what could have been done better. Where is that loophole in the system, Where is that hole in that system as the system is anti-black, So, and that's a play that's going to move even like globally as well. So we're going to be here for a long time, and we're going to sing protest songs, going to sing struggle songs for as long as black people are struggling.
Okay.
But I also think Iphupho Biko has ambitions well, as far as my leader have discussed, it, to form a musical institution
Oh, wow.
that will be based in our communities.
Yeah.
Iphupho Biko Global Institute that will, if properly funded, will empower young people by investing in tutors, investing in musical instruments, investing in facilities in at least across the 9 provinces, where there will be qualified musicians teaching music for free to the community, but also not limiting it to music, but also, literary arts, visual arts, and performance arts general. And I think it's something that this is something we can realize in our lifetime. It will depend on us, and we want to multiply, the spirit. In Fismasfall, we used to like to say, the spirit of Biko is here, and the spirit of Biko moves in mysterious ways. Sometimes it takes a form of a body and a voice, but sometimes it just takes a form of a spirit. You'll wake up, there's the ideas went further. Like you would say something on a podium and someone has printed it on a wall in graffiti. Or have printed it on their T-shirts, and it's something that we want to invest in the multiplication of these ideas. We'll invest in academic programs. We'll invest, if this band can achieve what it wants to achieve. Iphupho Biko will have a musician from each and every township, from each and every rural area, doing their own thing under the Global Institute, amplifying the message and exploring musical ideas even further and exploring artistic ideas, because this is the medium in which we find ourselves having to fight the struggle. The fight has definitely not ended. If anything, issues are pregnant. And there's a video from Fismas Ford of Griselda before the Great Hall walls actually open. And she's saying the students are outside of the Great Hall and they are singing Vulega Imbobo, which means the hall must open.
Yes.
We are saying the doors of learning must open. But equally we are saying the gatekeeping must end. Young people, it doesn't make sense that pensioners are in parliament.
No.
It doesn't make sense that young people are given 350 to invest in their dreams. It doesn't make sense. Issues will explode. When you put the Mentos inside the Coke, issues will explode quite sooner than we think. And I think as a popular Biko, the soundtrack will be there.
You'll be there. You'll be there. Oh, come on.
When we take our land, those songs will be playing in people's heads and all over. And I think it's something that we're honored to do. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. I'm excited. I am going to be at the Market Theatre on the 27th. You said. I'm excited, and I hope everyone else is excited. Please don't forget. What time is it?
It's at 7 p.m. and tickets are available on web tickets. And it's a really great production with experienced performers. On that night, we'll have theatre, we'll have visual arts.
So it's like mixed medium
on stage. Yeah, it's a cast of more than 20 people.
That sounds incredible.
So yeah, and it's happening at the main theatre, the John Kani Theatre. 400 seats. Yeah, so it's really
that's the big one.
It's really a great production. So yeah, I'd really encourage people to check it out.
Okay, I'm excited. I will see you guys there. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us, Funzani. I want to take you back to 2015, Fees Must Fall movement. Where are you when this begins? How do you get involved? And what was your experience?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Well, in actual fact, I had already graduated from my undergrad.
Really? When had you graduated?
I graduated in 2013.
Okay.
But I started working in 2014. And then in 2015, I went back to school for my postgrad.
Okay.
At UJ, that is.
All right.
So when Fees Must Fall happens, I was actually at UJ. I was both a student and a worker at the same
Okay.
time. I matriculated quite young. That's another thing. But and like in the midst of me transitioning into university, I was already reading rather around the politics of the country, the historical politics of the country, apartheid, and really just being reading about Steve Biko, for instance. I Write What I Like. I think that's the first and foremost Black consciousness
Yes.
sort of textbook, and for me, I think that's where I got conscientized into the politics of the country, and just finding trying to understand essentially what it means to be here in this position as Black people in this country. And so when Fees Must Fall starts, in actual fact, when Roads Must Fall starts, that's what
Yes.
sparked, I think, the first debate,
Yes.
right? And the conversation around decolonization and what it means. And
Decolonizing, especially within these institutions.
within these institutions. And what it also means to have a decolonial education and what that looks like. And that really caught my attention because already I had a particular understanding. And being sort of involved in the politics of PASMA as well, because I was part of PASMA at the time when Fees Must Fall was happening. And I think for me, when 2015 then happened, naturally, I was like, okay, this is a cause I definitely want to rally up on as well and join in. And so when now it moves from Roads Must Fall to Fees Must Fall, because I do think that Roads Must Fall became sort of like the intellectual arm
Yes,
of the Fordist movement,
yes.
right?
Okay.
And the conscientization that came with that became sort of the foundation that led into also Fees Must Fall. Because when we got to Fees Must Fall, we didn't only speak about fees, but we also elevated the conversation further to say we want decolonized
Yes.
education and quality education and education that speaks to us as African people, because we don't see ourselves in the thing that we are consuming as a curriculum or being taught. And so when that moves then into 2016, we are all part of the Fees Must Fall movement. And yeah, I couldn't stay away.
You couldn't stay away. You had to be part of it.
I had to be part of it.
So what was your experience being within the movement, and perhaps what are some of your memories that strike you still today?
Yeah. So I was at UJ, and one of the key things that I usually say about UJ, Fees Must Fall, was that it was actually led by women. An interesting part of UJ, Fees Must Fall, was that it was led by women, and women from different political parties. They say Gobo, Tolagelo was part of the EFF, and myself and all the other women who were part of the Fees Must Fall, coming from BASMA and various other people as well, right? And so my experience of it were a little bit different from what we were, or at least to what the experiences of it and UCT were, in terms of how them as women were. They had a particular radical politics that spoke to feminism, right? And that actually spoke to women, particularly leading the movement, which was a little bit different from us. Not to say that we were not aware of feminism, but we were taking over. We were just
you were just
it.
leading. It wasn't a sort of feminist or intersectional politics at play. It was you guys just happened to be the ones
to actually
take the job and say we're going.
And not to say there were no women, men in the forefront, but I'd say that Fees Must Fall was really held generally by women, right?
Yes.
And it was like, even though things moved because of women, right? Even though there were particular faces in the forefront, but things moved. The organizing behind the scene was really pushed by women, right? Which was quite a sight, at least for us at UJ. But when we got then to actually understand the politics within VETS, within UCT, we saw the differences in power dynamics within Fees Must Fall in and of itself, right? And how, women really were fighting to ensure that their voices are heard in the movement itself. And so that were sort of like my experiences of Fees Must Fall, and also just the differences in also the universities themselves, because there were moments when we would get together from various universities, and you would see that intersectionality was really there was literally intersectionality at play, right? Because you find someone from the University of Venda, for instance, or someone who comes from a university in the Eastern Cape, or the historically Black institutions, right? Coming in with the historically white African and white institutions, and UJ was an Afrikaner institution, and all of us have different sort of experiences. And what you see is that while there were people that were much more invested in having a decolonial conversation or dialogue, there were also students who were like, but we can't have this decolonial conversation when we don't have the basics in our campus. Yes. We don't have access to computers. We don't have access to water. There's so many things that are not structurally, infrastructure is not holding up where we come from. But you guys want to have a conversation about decoloniality, right? And you get to a point where you reckon with yourself and your positionality as well to say, hey, what does all of this mean?
That there's a class thing happening, and that you have to actually unpack and understand.
Exactly. And there's geography as well, right? Because there are some of us who grew up in the townships. I grew up literally all my life. I went to township schools. And there's someone who grew up in the rural areas. And those special kind of politics also play a role in the Bantu stands and how people actually make sense of themselves in the world becomes sort of like different, right? And then there's also queer politics as well that become a huge part of conversations as well, that becomes very important in the conversations of Fees Must Fall. And so those were sort of like my experiences. It was a very good space to interrogate, engage, reckon with yourself, and be free in actually engaging in the intellectual work. I mean, the physical aspect of it is another thing as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's very exciting. We were just looking on, some of us in envy, like, why did we do that when we were in university? I remember even visiting, and I like what you talk about in terms of organizing.
Yeah.
I would visit the Wits, because at that time I was working in Braamfontein. And I would, like from I don't know which floor, I think I was on 10th floor. And I would be like looking down and like watching the students, and I'm like, wow. I think one day my boss even asked me, she's like, do you want to join them? And she was being sarcastic, but I was like, yes, I would. And going to the Great Hall, like, I mean, to Senate House at Wits, and seeing the organizing behind, like the food, the drinks, and all you had to do was simply go there and say, what do you guys need? They send you to the right person. The right person tells you, okay, this is what we're looking for. And then you were able to like assist. So it was a machine.
Yeah.
Quite happening. So I think I'm feeling a little bit like some of the excitement about the things that were happening in the background. But we are now 10 years later, and does not seem like we're anywhere near free.
For sure.
Or affordable education. There is more investment in policing students than there is investment in the students themselves and creating a different experience for them, or giving young people more access to education. What is happening in South Africa when it comes to free or affordable education for all?
I think, in actual fact, taking it back to what we were advocating for during Fees Must Fall, one of the things that we were actually saying was that we don't want an education that is commodified, right? And currently what's happening is that education in and of itself is a commodity. There's a price tag, essentially, right? That is on it. And for me, as someone who literally went to, township schools and then from township schools that just happened to have fairly good marks and was able to then enter a university, the idea of having to pay for this thing right, for knowledge in and of itself is very disturbing, because so here's what Karl Polanyi essentially says, right? So I think, because I really want to borrow from him, because he makes it make sense for me. So Karl Polanyi writes at a particular time, right? He writes about over a century ago, where he actually conceptualizes this idea of fictitious commodities, right? So he identifies labor, money, and land as fictitious commodities, which are essentially things that are not supposed to be commodified, but are commodified. And when those things are commodified, there becomes then these tensions and conflict, because these are things that are supposed to be of life or social value, rather than of market value. But then, because we want to marketize them, then there is that conflict that exists between the society and market, right? And they're fighting for these things to ensure that they get re-embedded into the social life as just.
So there's a fight between the market, who wants to continue to commodify.
Yes.
But then the people are saying, but
why
are we? Yeah, we want them to be socialized, and to be normal, and simply exist, and not to be marketed so, because it affects the quality of life and experiences of the people. Okay.
Yeah. So I contend that then that what Karl Polanyi then sort of conceptualizes as a fictitious commodity is, we can actually apply that to education and knowledge currently, because that's exactly what we are seeing. We are seeing that friction, right? And Fees Must Fall was literally a depiction of a society trying to re-embed knowledge back into society as a social good and for public good, and not necessarily as a market good, as it has been, right? Because what we are seeing, the crisis of student debt, the crisis of access, for instance, and all of those things are things of the market. So when you deploy market mechanisms into a thing that's supposed to be a public good, then you will have people that will fight against that and say, no, but why, right? Because education is meant to actually assist us in developing our country.
Our country, yes.
But also developing the people as well, right? Our people as well, to say, okay, how do we make sure that the youth of this country become active players in the economy? But not only just active players, but also define what that economy looks like. Because we are speaking about decolonized education, and we need to start redefining things. So that's where I am at in terms of education and where education sits right now, because I really do believe that it's not supposed to be a commodity. No. And because of it's a commodity, you see all these things coming up of, there's this student debt, for instance, in the recent DTIC situation, right, where we see that, student debt is now being used against essentially students, young people of the country.
Like you leave university blacklisted already, which is like your future is cancelled. Where do you start? Where do you go? Besides the fact that you don't even have the qualification that you studied for because you did not finish paying the fees.
Yeah.
So you're already starting from, that's minus, like you're starting from under the ground.
Yeah. And debt itself has a market, right?
Yes, there is a market for debt.
Yeah. There's literally people, debt can be sold. That is already financializing education. That is already commodifying. Now we are seeing education strictly now as a market.
Completely. They're taking it further and further, as opposed to actually where we thought, what we thought Fees Must Fall was going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And now there's like literally some of us and other young people who are like, no, this can't happen, right? And we continue to fight against that. But also there's lack of investment from the government itself, right?
And I wanted to say that because I think, like, looking at even on the African continent, that South Africa is one of the most expensive tertiary fees and also one of the least subsidized by the government in terms of higher education.
So, and because I was doing the numbers as part of an article that I wrote, and one of the things that you see is that I think between 2019 and 2023, the education grants from the government right, the subsidies was like 45%, made up 45% of the income from the universities. So what that means is that the 55% is essentially from private. It's tuition, it's
Yes.
also private funders and all of those people.
So
right?
this 45%, that includes NSFAS?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where I'm a little bit not.
All
but what I'm saying, no, it's only subsidies. Sorry.
Oh, so
they
only
get
subsidies from the government,
because
not the
NSFAS,
loan
remember,
is a loan scheme.
Yes, and NSFAS also covers tuition.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
okay. So the tuition is coming from outside.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
I
right.
hear you.
And so from what we are seeing, and of course NSFAS becomes like another aspect of it being of education being sort of seen as though it's a commodity because it was a loan for the longest time, right? And it still is for the missing middle, for instance. So the NSFAS conversation in and of itself also is another aspect that we really need to actually but I'll just make sure on that whether NSFAS is part of the 45%. But what I'm essentially saying is that what we are seeing then is that there is like an appetite for the driver being from the private sector, particularly when it comes to universities, right? And one of the things that we need to understand is that once the private sector becomes more and more involved within the universities, then the private sector get to dictate what then happens within the university, what kind of a curriculum is actually being implemented within all. What are some of the key? And I think we've seen that even in, for instance, when there's like a sponsorship for some type of research, right? What is researched? What becomes prioritized as research?
It depends on the sponsorship.
Depends on, and really those can be very much divorced from what is actually happening on the ground. And so one of the things that we really need to start interrogating is that composition exactly, right? To say what is it that comes in and out of the university and what informs the university's positionality and positions. Yes. So if a university takes a stance against Gaza, for instance, what informs that, right? If a university takes a stance to say, no, we are going to implement or we are going to research on this particular issue over and not on this particular issue, what is it that informs that?
That is informing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned numbers and about the investment into our higher education sector. Can you break this down for me? So
here's my thing, right? I begin by interrogating the public. So there's obviously like the National Treasury, right, that puts numbers into, okay, this is how much we are going to invest in the education sector, and this is how much we're going to invest in the healthcare sector and all of that. But one of the things that I actually interrogate is the PIC itself, right? And the PIC is essentially Public Investment Corporation. So what the PIC does is that it manages money for the GEPF, which is the government pension fund, right? And what then happens is that the PIC has 3 trillion in its coffers, right? And it is public money, essentially, because it manages money for the public sector, right? And what then happens is that the PIC does not necessarily invest in any way towards the development of our country. And I argue this by saying that the PIC uses its money to essentially drive the private sector schooling. Because if you check the numbers, the PIC has, at first, it actually had committed about 1 billion towards private sector schools like your Kuros and those private sector schools that are basically, listed in the JSE and all of that, right? And they've actually poured more money in that than they actually. There's no publicly known figures or monies that have been directed by the PIC towards public education. What the PIC does is that it has, when it comes to school, they're involved in 3 ways, right? One is through the schools and education investment Impact Fund, which they recently actually exited. And that fund was basically managed by the Old Mutual. So PIC recently, I think in May, exited that fund. Secondly, how the PIC gets involved is that it gets involved in the edu loan. So the PIC actually owns about, I think it's about 40%, if I'm not mistaken, of the edu loan, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So edu loan is, and then also it does state that they have a developmental portfolio, which they called Isibaya. And in that developmental portfolio, they do state that infrastructure, social infrastructure is one of their, but there's no actual publicly known amounts that have been invested in the social infrastructure. So social infrastructure would include education, would include healthcare, and so forth. But there hasn't been anything that has been taken out by the PIC to say, okay, this is the amount of money that will be invested in the public sector or social infrastructure in itself. But if you check, the driving of the private sector, schooling, the PIC has been actually in the forefront of that.
Yes, clearly.
Right? So what I'm arguing is that we need to have policies that actually mandates the PIC to say, in actual fact, you should actually be investing, into the public sector, into social infrastructure, because by virtue of doing that, you are investing in the country in which these companies that you are investing in are operating, right? And by investing in our young people, you ensure that they become obviously economic players, and they are also able to contribute towards the economy in its entirety. So it's not necessarily a loss. And we need to understand investment like that.
Yeah, so that they are bigger and more long-term benefits by reinvesting into the country, the same country whose people are giving you money.
Exactly. It's essentially that. We just need, and that's what I then say, that prescribed assets become important in that way. And what's funny about prescribed assets is that they were actually deployed by the apartheid government, but we know that the apartheid government was a welfare state for white. It was a white welfare state, right? And prescribed assets are exactly that, policies that can help us to say, we mandate you to actually invest in infrastructure and in social infrastructure, and ensure that we reinvest into our country. And that's also how we can perhaps begin to realize even what do you call the GDP growth, right? The economic growth.
Yes, indeed, which is at a standstill, really.
Yeah.
So we are speaking about student debt and all of this. Obviously, we had a situation where the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition submitted amendments to regulations of the National Credit Act, asking education institutions to submit credit by students. Can you just explain to us what was happening there and what you think perhaps the motive behind this is?
Yeah. So, okay. So from what I'm understanding, the minister was trying to do is that, so the logic is that in order for SMMEs, right, to access funding from financial institutions, there needs to be more data, right, for that the financial institutions can work with to determine whether this person can get this funding or not, right? So basically, you need to have a good credit record, right, to say, okay, we can give this person. So my understanding from what he was saying is that they want to open up that space by also including, right, the education system data to sort of open to give to financial institutions in order for them to determine and to make the decisions of saying, okay, the SMME.
Yeah.
I don't understand that logic.
No,
personally,
it's not making sense.
I'm not really sure, and maybe I'm reading him wrong. I don't know, but I think it's important to not labor on that because I really don't.
It's I think maybe that's the thing, that it wasn't making sense how it filters down to students in this regard, but also how that was overlooked in whatever amendment they were attempting to make.
Yeah.
So we'll leave them behind because it's not worth it. But I do want to speak about student debt. The EFF currently has proposed a student debt relief bill to just eliminate debt for whatever existing debt there is for students. What do you think about that effort?
I think it's a good effort. I do also think that, as I spoken about the PIC can actually contribute to that.
Okay, there we go.
You know, that's one aspect that perhaps we can look into. And I mean, I heard from how Sihle actually explains it that, the SETAs obviously do have some discretionary funds that are there that are usually used for particular contexts, right? And I mean, that's one of the ways in which we can access monies. But there are also other levers within within our country that we can actually utilize to make sure that the debt relief fund is actually working and it's well coordinated and can function to the better of the students.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me. I don't know if you have any last thoughts you'd like to give us reflecting on 10 years of Fees Must Fall.
Yeah, no, everyone must come to the Market Theatre. We will all be
on
there.
The 27th.
On the 27th. We are all excited
we'll
to reflect
on
this moment of Fees Must Fall. But yeah, we look forward to seeing what Iphupho has in store for us. I think it's such a brilliant combination of artists. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see 20 plus, artists in one stage, in one night, and see how also the Fees Must Fall movement and what it means for everyone. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.